Did you guys see that I had like a tweet go semi-viral?
No.
No, and now I feel like a really bad friend.
Yeah, okay, so I'm glad we're all on the same page.
So it was actually really cool, but I saw a TikTok that just kind of made me think about the tweet. I remembered the TikTok earlier, but since blasting a storm in the bathroom just now, I don't remember what the TikTok was. But I think I figured out the perfect way to solve a Christian conundrum.
Oh.
You know how when Christians are talking about their religion and they're talking about God and the Trinity, people are like, that makes no sense. You're dumb. How can a God be three distinct people, but also the same person? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So here it is. My viral tweet that went viral with like 2 likes.
Emma, I was looking for anything that went.
Now I think I know which one you're talking about.
I know exactly which tweet you're talking about now.
Christians,
yeah, I know what tweet it is.
You can use this for free. You can have this. I'm not a Christian, so I won't need to use it. But here's how you describe the Trinity to non-Christians. So, you know furries?
Oh my god.
Yes, I know furries, Emma.
So people wear fursuits, and when they're wearing their fursuit, they're like a different entity, you know? You call them by a different name, they look different, all that stuff. So humans are to fursuits as God is to Jesus and the Holy Spirit.
Why?
Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of the Casual Episode Horror Podcast. Today we're talking about a movie called The Endless, but you know won't be endless? This episode of the podcast.
I feel like you're announcing the end of the podcast.
No.
Like, what won't be endless? This podcast. This is our last episode.
Will one day end. But yeah, so with me today are me, Emma, your favorite host, and then these other clowns.
Oh.
Yeah. Me, Nina, your hopefully second favorite, but I'll take third. I will not take fourth. I will come to your house and kill you.
I was just going to intro as me, Noah, your favorite host, and we would all just be the favorite host, but now you make me sound like an asshole. Now you gotta tag
yourself. I already claimed favorite.
Unfortunate.
Okay, so Noah's like a third.
Third tier host.
Third tier host. And then with
guest
us,
host, shut up with third tier comments.
With us for the very first time, we have a guest.
A guest.
Well,
we have super fan Graham. He's listened to every single episode of the podcast, and
Twice.
He's here as
maybe
part of
times.
a Make-A-Wish Foundation sort of deal, where he just wanted to be on an episode of the podcast before he dies someday.
I mean, honestly, we're really happy to be able to help.
Yeah,
we're nothing
honestly,
if not
I love
charitable.
charity.
We're charitable here.
We're charitable.
Every
like
doctor
charity.
I've gone to has told me I'm going to die, so I appreciate you
Yeah.
letting me on.
I mean,
I gotta
we
be honest,
don't know
nothing
when.
has sounded less sincere than Nina saying, we love charity.
Yeah.
I'm really channeling my Cruella de Vil today.
Yeah.
It's the hair.
Hashtag girl
It's
boss.
the hair. Hashtag girl boss.
I am woman, hear me roar, as Emma Stone in Cruella is purportedly going to say, but I kind of feel like...
She did say, you didn't see the preview?
No, it's in the preview, but I feel like it's going to be a Rogue One thing, where,
yeah,
you know,
it has
how
to get
Jin
cut
says, I'm a rebel, I rebel, or whatever. This is a rebellion, I rebel. That got cut out. I feel like that's
Thank
the
goodness it
situation.
did.
This is going to be with Cruella.
Yeah.
At least I hope so.
We hope
This is
so.
going to be a real Cruella of a time. Since Jeff's not here, someone has to make those jokes.
Yeah. Thank you, Noah, for volunteering to take your brother's spot.
Definitely Jeff tier.
Okay.
Let me get this in before I forget. We fast forward end of the movie. Jeff says, Wow, they really did have the endless of a time. There we go. Okay.
There you go.
Now we
Cool.
can do
Perfect.
other
Love it.
things.
That was maybe a spoiler, like a little bit. So sorry, audience.
The
but
movie
that's
does
fine.
end.
The movie does
Kind of
end. It's
fake
not
marketing,
endless.
if we're being honest.
It's weird. But yeah, so let me just dive right into a non-spoilery summary for you guys.
Woo!
The Endless is directed by a team of besties named Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson. This was their third movie that they made together. The other two before this were Resolution and Spring. Spring, I've heard really great things about. I'm actually really interested in watching it. And then they also had a movie come out after this in 2019 called Synchronic, starring Anthony Mackie, as we know from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And
Who is he?
He's
which one?
He's Falcon.
Okay.
Thank you for asking
Noah.
that.
Watch
Noah.
it.
I didn't know either.
I don't keep up with Marvel TV because
why, Noah?
Because I don't know.
But
I hate when people have fun, I
WandaVision.
guess.
But WandaVision, Noah. WandaVision.
But what about
know,
Mephisto, Noah?
I did actually totally forget that I got so angry at WandaVision while just trying to search for something unrelated the other week.
Yeah.
I had no memory of that until I was listening through, and I'm like, oh yeah, I flipped a table about that for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay.
But
speaking of
I hate
flipping
fun.
tables, this movie had a $300,000 budget.
Wow.
I was having such a hard time finding its budget. I'm glad you were able to find it.
Yeah, it was on a website. I don't know how credible that website is
It
because
seems
in
like a
an
big
interview with the directors, the interviewer was asking about the budget for the first movie, and the directors were like, don't believe IMDb. Because they're like, somebody put on IMDb that our budget for the first movie was like $1 million. They're like, I haven't seen $1 million in my goddamn life. They're like, we saved up maybe a few $1,000s and then called in a lot of favors and then just went into the woods and filmed it. Yeah, so the first movie didn't have much of a budget. I don't know if that number is credible, but it's referenced pretty regularly in some of the like trivia and stuff that this had like a small budget. Like they use the song House of the Rising Sun a lot in this movie because it's public domain. So they didn't have to pay to use it. And also, the two main actors for the movie, or the people who play the two main characters, are the directors.
Which will make sense when we get into it because their names are Justin and Aaron.
Yeah.
It's convenient. It was really confusing that the one who's named Aaron went by Justin for the movie. It must have been some weird inside joke.
Probably. But
wait, are they actually flipped?
No.
You jerk.
That would have been great.
I think that would be really funny if they had them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
hear that, Justin and Aaron? Could have been funny.
Could have been funny, Justin and Aaron. Come on, get your act together. But so they had to do a few things to cut cost in a lot of ways. But that's all the fun facts I'll share for now. I'll share some more maybe after I do this summary. So this movie,
summarize that.
Let me summarize that for you.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, no problem, Noah. Third most favorite host. The movie is about two brothers who have escaped a UFO death cult and have been out for a few years now. There's the older brother, Aaron, who kind of older brother is Justin.
Yep.
Who pulled Aaron out kind of against his will, sort of. Was just like, hey, there's going to be like a mass suicide thing going on. Like, we need to get out of here. So they left. And then for years, Justin has been kind of controlling what they're doing, like helping make sure that they're able to survive. They're working as like cleaners for various houses and stuff. They're not making much. They're not living on much. And Aaron begins to think back to his times with the cult, quote unquote, and is reconsidering going back. Really wants to go back to at least like visit and see it. And they receive a tape in the mail that is of one of the cult members, Anna, kind of talking about like, oh, hey, what is it called? The like
Ascension.
The Ascension is coming. Like, if you come to visit us and we're gone, like, don't worry, we'll be back soon. Like that sort of stuff. And this kind of like spurs that conversation even more of like, Aaron really wants to go back. And Justin is very much against it because he, as the older brother, like remembers a bit more of the creepy stuff that went on there. Whereas Aaron was pulled out as like a teenager and didn't really see much of that. He just remembers like the good times. But eventually he relents and the two travel to go visit this cult, and everybody is still there, and it's just like a weird vibe, and then stuff happens, and we'll get into that stuff that happens once I do the spoiler summary later on. Some more fun facts. I don't know what this means. I'm just gonna read it directly. And Noah, maybe you can tell me what it means. Wait, where'd that fun fact go? Hold on.
Oh, the anticipation.
I'll just hold my thinking face.
This was the first genre film to play in U.S. competition at the Tribeca Film Festival since Let the Right One In 2008.
I don't know what genre film is supposed to mean.
It means horror, I think. Right?
Nah, it's
like,
dumb as fuck. No, because a lot of people throw the term around, and I don't know what it's supposed to be, because it's like, people will talk about movies that are near horror, but they're not quite, and they'll be like, well, it's a genre film. And well, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Because what I thought it meant was that it meant it's the first film of that genre to be to run the circuit.
Nope. No, because people will talk about genre films specifically in reference to like horror stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so confused by it. It really is very frustrating.
I
wish I could help, but I was actually literally today thinking, what does that even mean? Because I was listening to another podcast where they're like, genre film, whatever that even means.
All right. Well, cool.
So,
well, there's your answer, folks. Noah giving you a crisp and concise definition of genre film.
That is what I do.
Yep, that's what he do, though. But yeah, so Noah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the critical consensus of this movie?
Why, Emma, there was a great critical consensus to this movie.
Wow.
Rotten Tomatoes hit this with a 92%. Metacritic, 80%. We start to dip a little bit. IMDb gives us a 6.5.
IMDb is always so low.
It is so low.
Always.
And Letterboxd hits us with a 3.3 out of 5, which is, about a 6.6.
I feel like IMDb just doesn't like horror.
I would agree.
That makes sense.
But I
Have they ever done demographics on who posts reviews on the different sites?
I would love to know.
I would love to know as well.
I know Letterboxd is a newer site, so it's a younger user base.
And it feels like a lot of film people who are genuinely interested in films use it, and like people who like actually enjoy that kind of thing, instead of like Rotten Tomatoes is the one where everyone just kind of goes to it. IMDb people. I don't ever go to IMDb looking for a rating. I don't either. Cast.
Same.
Rotten
Tomatoes
is the only
reason I go there.
Rotten Tomatoes is actually where I found this movie. Because I was trying to pick a movie for my turn. I didn't really want to do something that any of us had seen before. And so I just went on Rotten Tomatoes, like top whatever horror movies of all time by like rating. And I started going down that list for more like recent movies, and then ones that seemed obscure enough that I didn't think any of us had seen them before. And watched some trailers for a few movies, and then came across this one, and I was like, oh, this seems really cool, and I picked it.
I'm glad you picked it.
Yeah.
Not to spoil, but I enjoyed it.
Wow, what a spoiler, Noah. If you're just going to talk about how much you enjoyed it, why don't we just talk about your rating of the movie?
I mean, if I were to add an arbitrary number onto this, it would be a 7. I don't
Only
know
a
why I don't want to
7,
give it more than
really?
a 7. Yeah, I don't know why I don't want to give it more. No, I do know why. And it's stuff that I'll get into from the very front half of the movie. But I love the writing. I thought this was a good story. I thought that this was a really enjoyable time.
Mhm.
And all in all, it was just a good watch. You don't often get cosmic horror that actually stays grounded.
Yeah,
And that's something that I liked a lot about this.
but not enough to give it like an 8.
I almost gave it an 8, and I don't know why I didn't, but I got to stick with my 7 now because I did write it down.
I have a lot of stuff that I'd like to talk about with this movie where there are like little bitty problems that I have with it. But
She's about to give it a 5, y'all.
no.
Slasher
yeah.
territory.
Yeah, slasher territory. No, I really like cosmic horror. Again, it's really nice that this movie kept it grounded. I think that cosmic horror, I think it's kind of really fun that the way the cosmic horror works is antithetical to the like concept of it, where I think the smaller scale and like more contained a cosmic horror story is, the better it works. I think that was definitely something that this film did really strongly. I want to give it a solid 8.5. It's up there for me.
Nice.
Oh,
Graham, as our guest, and since we value you so highly, I'm going to let you go last with your rating, and I'll go now.
Okay.
Seems fair.
I had no expectations for this movie going into it, obviously. I'd watched a trailer, but other than that, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know who these directors were. It might have helped me a little bit to know who these directors were and kind of their filmography prior to going into this movie. But watching it, I really enjoyed it. I really love kind of movies that take it slow and kind of like build on itself and like develop a lot of things. And this kind of like fit that niche really well, and then had a really interesting second half. And so I'm gonna give it a 9.
Nice.
Graham about to hit us with that 3.
No, I
Graham, this
hated
is your
movie.
one rating that you get for the podcast. Make it count.
All right.
Unless we have you as a guest again someday.
I hope so.
Then you have to make that one count. You can throw this one away.
Okay. I can redeem myself. I'm coming in the middle with an 8 out of 10. And
Okay.
I'll talk about why it wasn't higher, because there's one particular reason why I didn't rate it higher. But I was
wonder if
nervous
it's the same
watching
reason.
this, because I thought cosmic horror would be really hard to translate to film. Because I feel like a lot of cosmic horror is like internal, perception of what's going on and how you're going to survive or surmount like this seemingly unfathomable entity that's coming after you or something like that. But I was really pleasantly surprised, and I think this movie, without giving away spoilers, did a lot well to make this more realistic and terrifying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just real quick, this isn't really a spoiler. It's just kind of like a joke that exists in the movie. Are you guys rating it so low because the one guy didn't know that sleeping with someone meant to have sex with them rather than just sleeping in the same bed as them? Is that the reason?
But that was very funny.
That actually does play into an overall bigger issue that I have with the movie. Which is, and this isn't a spoiler either, but it's that this guy is supposed to be like in his 20s, and I get that he was raised in a cult, but he acts like he's like 5.
Yeah.
He literally has the maturity of like an early teen, and it doesn't.
Nina, please, we're not at this part of the review yet.
But that's why that joke. That joke bugged me. That's why that joke.
That is something that I like picked up on, and I was like, this is something that's going to be a problem for people, and I'm looking forward to talking about that after our trigger warnings and stuff. So
yeah.
Trigger warnings, obviously this is a movie about a quote unquote UFO cult. It's not really a UFO cult, but that's what they call it, and it is very cultish. So if cults aren't your thing, probably don't watch this movie. Maybe. Were there any other?
There's some liberal usage of the R slur at one point of the movie, from a character whose name is Shitty Carl.
Yeah.
So I mean, he does live up to his name.
Yeah.
There's also a fair bit of suicide depicted.
Yes.
In it.
Oh, that actually, yes, that
there
is
is
also
a
true.
good amount of
Yeah.
that.
So if that's,
I didn't even register that. I'm not gonna lie. I thought about it during the movie, but not enough to be like, this could be a problem because it's so taken in stride. But yes, that's important.
Yeah. So if that's triggering.
Also, if you have lived in Washington and you now find craft beer to be triggering, I'm gonna give you a warning for that as well.
Interesting. I didn't think about that, but yeah, I guess so.
If you've ever been on Tinder in Washington, you know how triggering craft beer can be. But yeah,
all right.
Nah.
Oh, what's up, Nina? What were you gonna say?
No, I think that covers it. Was all I was gonna say.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask Emma what her scary rating was, because personally, I am interested in knowing how scary Emma thought this movie was. Emma, what do you think? Are you excited to hear what Emma thinks about this movie?
I'm pretty excited to hear what Emma thinks about how scary this movie was in Emma's Scary Corner, created by Emma. So Emma, why don't you go ahead and tell us about Emmy's Scary Corner? Thanks, Emma. I'll do that right now. So listen, y'all. Just imagine me like scooting forward in my chair, kind of like hands on my legs in like a cool manner. Or know what? Scratch that. I'm like the cool science teacher that like sits on the desk and like leans back on the desk and puts one leg over the other to talk to you kids for real, you know?
Ooh.
Y'all know that I got that religious trauma. I've talked about it before, and religion is rough. And cults are religious in like the creepiest ways. And so they talk about this in the beginning of the movie. They talk about deprogramming, which is a very real thing for people who escape cults, because your brain becomes so wired to think one way that it's hard to kind of like reset it to normal societal quote unquote standards or whatever. And so cults are just very creepy in general, and then them going back to the cult and it being so like friendly and warm and all this shit, and not creepy at all, but there's like that subtle like undertone of creepy, like that's scary. There aren't like a lot of jump scares in this movie. There aren't really any. There's one that kind of is a jump scare, but not really, and it made me jump. But it's a pretty creepy movie. It's pretty scary. But the scariest thing to me is there's a scene where one of the characters has to dive underwater, and y'all know how I feel about water. And when he comes up, he says he saw something in the water, and you get like this aerial view of kind of the boat, and there's very obviously something in the water. And, you know, it could have been a shark.
It could have been a shark.
It could have been a shark, and that's the scariest part for me. So that's why this movie gets a 10 out of 10 scary rating.
I respect it. It. Emma, I just want to let you know.
Yep.
I'm really glad that you pushed through your fear of sharks to watch that scene.
Thank you. I almost skipped
it.
I almost skipped it.
But it had to be hard.
Had to be hard. It was hard. Thank you for acknowledging how hard that was for me.
Incredible.
Thank you, Graham. It was. Now,
so I hear there's some spoilers to this movie.
There are some spoilers to this movie.
Damn.
Yeah. So, to continue, we are now in the spoilery part of this podcast. So if this movie sounds interesting to you and you don't want it to be spoiled, I recommend maybe going and watching the movie and coming back later.
I won't lie. This is one I think that you would do well to watch it unspoiled.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know most movies are like that, but like this is a good one to go into with as little knowledge as you can.
Yeah. So here's the deal skis. This movie. So they get to the camp, right? Everybody's being real friendly. They all look exactly the same as when they left. The cult members say that it's because of like healthy eating, all that stuff. But it's just, it's a weird vibe. You can tell
they're vegans right off the bat.
You can tell they're vegans. They talk about it all the time. The camp itself sells alcohol, like craft beer, to like the locals in order to make money for the camp. And yeah, they worship this kind of being in the forest, sort of. It's not something you ever see, but it's something that they believe is there, and they worship it. And there's this weird atmospheric anomaly that you kind of view in the movie where you see like 2 moons in the sky. And they say that when 3 moons appear in the sky is when the ascension happens. So everybody's just kind of waiting for this time of ascension. And you kind of see the characters going around interacting with the cult. And obviously Aaron is like very excited to be back. He's getting along with people. He's talking. He's like fitting in really well. There's one person in particular named Anna that he's vibing with a lot because she's cute and she seems into him. So they spend a lot of time together and they sleep together. Wink, wink. And then Justin, being the one that pulled Aaron out of this place and got them to run away, is obviously very kind of on edge, very skeptical, very critical of everything, kind of treating everything with at a like arm's length. And as the movie goes on, they initially were only going to stay 1 day and 1 night, but that keeps like getting extended. And at one point, Justin is going for a run, and he goes out kind of into the wilderness, and all this like dust and dirt is getting kicked up around him. This tree falls behind him, and then suddenly, like when the dust settles, there are these photographs like all around him. And he picks one up, and it's of him and his brother fishing by this buoy in the lake, which they had been doing earlier. And so this freaks him out. He goes to kind of like the de facto head of the cult and is like, what the fuck is this? And the guy is like, the God is communicating with you. If you want, like, it's telling you that if you want answers, like, that's where you're going to find them. It's like, so if you go to that buoy and dive down, there'll be something there for you, and that will hold your answers. Because a big problem Justin had with the cult in general was that there were never any answers. And everybody was always really vague about everything. And so the next day, as him and Aaron are fishing, he dives down into the water and eventually comes back up with this like box. And he says there was something in the water. You get this sky shot of there very obviously being some big like circle thing in the water. But then it dissipates. In the box, there is a tape, and on the tape, like, they don't watch the tape until later. But Justin, upon seeing that it's a tape, is like, okay, we're getting the fuck out of here. We're leaving. And Aaron's like, we're not just going to leave. Like, like, I'm not gonna go. And Justin's like, fuck it, fine, you can stay, I'm leaving. And Aaron's like, okay, whatever, like, let's just go back, say our goodbyes like normal people, and then we'll leave. And so they go back, they're having dinner with everybody, and they talk about finding this tape, and they're like, oh great, let's have a viewing. And it obviously becomes very clear that finding these tapes is a pretty regular event, and they're messages from their god. And so they play the tape, and on the tape, it's an old recording. Maybe not even a recording, but it's a video of Aaron and Justin and one other person talking to somebody else.
It was Smiling Dave.
It was probably Smiling Dave. Talking to somebody else about the cult, trying to recruit them in. And Justin was freaked out about this, kind of leaves, and the cult leader, Hal, comes out and is talking to him about it, and he's like, I think the message that's trying to be portrayed by this video is, like, forgiveness. Like, you left and told all these newspapers that we were some sort of suicide UFO cult, and that we like castrate ourselves and all these lies when that's not what we do. And that's made it really hard for us, like, to sell our beer and to survive. And it was really fucked up. But he's like, listen, we don't hold any animosity towards you. Everything's forgiven. And I think that the God is trying to tell you that everything is forgiven too, if you want to come back. Justin kind of freaks out, and it leads to Hal being like, maybe it's best that you just leave. Justin's like, cool, Aaron, let's go. And I realize at this point, this is a long fucking summary. But there's a lot of detail in this movie that's kind of important. Aaron doesn't want to leave, so Justin's like, whatever. So he leaves. Can't get the car started, so he just starts wandering around in the wilderness. He starts coming across some freaky shit, and he comes across, what is it? Crazy Dave? What is it?
Shitty Carl.
Shitty Carl.
He finds Shitty Carl. He sees Shitty Carl go into, like, this kind of woodshed. And so he goes to follow him to, like, ask for directions. Is knocking on the door, opens the door, and sees Shitty Carl's body is hung inside. He freaks out, and then Shitty Carl shows up behind him. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? And Justin's like, what the shit? And Shitty Carl kind of explains that there are all of these spaces in this mountain and in the wilderness that are like time loops. And he's stuck in a time loop of 3 hours. And no matter what he does, he can't get out of it. And like, the campers are stuck in another time loop, and that time loop is about 10 years. Shitty Carl doesn't explain that, but you find that out later. And so he's like, okay, I'll help you with a map to get back to your brother, to explain all this stuff to him and to try to fucking leave. But I need you to go to a friend's place and get me a gun first. And so he goes to this friend's place, and they're the two characters from these directors' first movie, whatever the fuck it's called. Resolution. And it's basically this one friend trying to, like, get his other friend clean from drugs. And so he's got him chained to the wall and just trying to get him clean. And so he talks to them, and they have a lot more experience with this god as well, and are saying that it just constantly, like, fucks with them, and they're trying to find a way to break free and haven't been able to. And so they give Justin a gun, and Justin starts to leave, and they burn their house down to kill themselves, and then their time loop resets, and it's like the very beginning of the movie Resurgence played out. So Justin leaves, gets back, gets the map to get back to his brother. And at the same time, the brother's going through some stuff, and he gets a message from the god showing this weird fucking like RV.
I wonder whose loop the RV is, because it didn't look like there was anyone there.
That is also somebody from Resolution. And we can talk about that later. I'm going to mess up that word all the time. And so the cult leader says, like, I think the god is telling you if you want to find your brother, that's where you need to go. And so he starts leaving to go to try to find his brother because he's been going through some stuff. And they eventually meet at this RV after traveling through all these weird time loops. One of which that Aaron runs across is a time loop of about 5 seconds where it's this kind of like Civil War looking dude in a tent that just is sitting on a chair and runs for the edge of the tent and it explodes. And so he's kind of like looking inside this tent, seeing this over and over and over again. And the guy eventually notices him and tells him to like leave before he gets stuck in it too. So he leaves. Eventually they find themselves at this caravan or at this RV and they're arguing. And they're traveling together. Aaron is still very much on the side of like, even though I know all this shit is going down now, I want to stay. Justin's like, okay, whatever. Then they get back. The third moon has appeared in the sky. Ascension has happened. Everybody's dead. They find a shack full of tapes that show that this has been happening as early as the 1940s of like the god kind of like communicating with them via tapes. And the brother still wants to stay. And the oldest brother is like, fine, if you want to stay, I can't have it on my conscience to leave you here. So I'm going to stay too. And so then the little brother's like, that's all you needed to say, baby. Now I'm good to leave because I only ever wanted you to respect the decisions that I made. And so then they try to escape as like the camp is blowing up as the god is tearing through it. And they're able to get through this kind of camp time loop. And then the movie ends. And that was probably the longest summary we've had for a movie. And I'm sorry about that.
There's a lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Literally.
And we'll flesh some of those out as we talk about this movie. Whatever. Yeah. But I've been talking for a while. One of you talk.
All right. So I really hated in the front half of the movie how everything was blue tinted. It was really washed out. And I realized after they had been at the camp for a while that they were probably just trying to show how unhappy they were there, because as soon as we got to the camp, the color grading was fixed and everything looked normal. Yeah. But it looked so bad.
That's one thing that I wanted to say too, was when we were, so these guys are not like amateur filmmakers necessarily. They are a small film studio. Their budget's pretty small, all that, but they're not like amateurs. That being said, the front bit of the movie where they're not at the cult yet is the weakest part. And we were like 3 shots in and I turned to Noah and I'm like, this is a small film studio, right? And he's like, yeah, what makes you say that? And I'm like, well, the fact that a big exposition thing was a single text that was on the phone in 1 shot. And that was like it. Because that's like, it's not like necessarily like a terrible way of delivering exposition, but I've only really ever seen it in like either older movies where cell phones were just starting to be a thing, or small budget movies where it's the easiest way to deliver exposition. Because I feel like bigger, more modern movies try and be really creative about how they show texting. But the other one, like, I only have like 2 other problems with this movie, and then I just love everything else. As previously addressed, there's the whole Aaron's super immature, and Partially, I get that because he was raised in a cult and he's only ever been with his brother who dragged him out of that cult. So I do understand parts of that. On the other hand, if he's been through deprogramming, it leads me right into my next thing, which is
they're
why...
still going through deprogramming.
Yeah.
But they have been out for 10 years.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yes?
It's been 10 years since he saw Shitty Carl.
Yeah.
They talked to each other about that.
Yeah.
And that's when
You're
they
right.
left. They all talk about not having seen each other in a decade. My biggest problem with this whole movie is that Justin would be at all okay with going back to this cult.
Yeah, that was one of my big things too. And that Aaron's like reason to want to go back that he brings up 3 times is that the food is good.
I get he's living on ramen, like
yeah,
1 pack of ramen each day.
true.
But
yeah, and then they get there, it's just like green beans.
So
It's the
here's
only
the
food
thing.
they show.
What
I was
thought
just
it
like,
was the
okay.
green beans.
Okay.
The
And
shot
craft
on
beer.
the green beans and craft beer.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. My rationale for Aaron still being a bit immature and not getting some things is, as established, like, grew up in a cult, is having to go through deprogramming, but also they're not really socializing very well with people their age.
True.
They talk about that. And also, they're extremely poor, and as established, they're not eating well. So they probably don't have access to like TV or anything like that that would clue them into some like social things like sleeping with each other or various other things. So they're a bit underdeveloped in a few like social areas because of that. Even though they have been out for 10 years, like I can excuse that. I can like get it. As far as Justin being okay going back, I think he legitimately believed that they would be dead. And so they'd go back and maybe there were like 1 or 2 people that were still around. Maybe not even people that had been there when they left. But I think he thought when they went back that like everybody they knew would be dead and it wouldn't be the same. And his brother would see it and then be like, okay, fine, let's just keep living and trying to make it out in the real world.
See, I get that. But the other thing is knowing that they are currently going through deprogramming, and they're both seeing a therapist, that we see that. Justin had not brought that up to his therapist, and because I feel like the therapist would be like, no, absolutely not. In no world is this a good idea. Even if they are dead, this isn't a good idea. So, like, I love where the movie goes. If they hadn't gone, there would be no movie. So it's not that big of a deal. I just think it's a weak point in the story for me personally, where it's like, well, it's unfortunate the way that we get to all the good stuff is something that I struggle with stretching my disbelief for. I mean, it's just suspending my disbelief. That's what I meant.
I just hate Aaron. I hate Aaron
Straight
so
up.
much. There is no element of his character that I like. He's childish and he's in his 30s. I can't tolerate people who act like that. Like at the end when they're trying to push start the car and it comes back to, you gotta let me drive the car, and then he just stops trying to escape. That was so frustrating to me.
Man.
I don't care that they got away. I don't care that was his chance to be like, you always mess things up, but you're my family and I love you. No, just stop. Also, what is it? There's one other thing that he did that really frustrated me. I have no love in my heart for Aaron at all. Justin was a dick, but like,
I think that's the important part, though, at the beginning, so that Justin isn't a dick, is he's letting Aaron come just because he thinks it'll help him. Because he's very micromanagey of Aaron, and I think that one allowance is what lets you know that he cares about his brother. Besides, taking him out of a cult, which Aaron does not see as a blessing necessarily.
Yeah.
He does not.
And that the end scene was a bit awkward with them pushing the car. I 100% agree. And I get that they had to kind of like
shove all that character development into one.
Spell out some of the character development, like, so you really get it and it hits home or whatever. But I think with the pushing the car thing and Aaron wanting to drive, I thought it was kind of like said that was the case because Justin was stronger. So when Aaron is like getting in the car to like start it, Justin can actually like still keep it going so that they could like jumpstart it.
That's
I
probably
may be
true.
imagining that, but
they did not say that though.
Yeah, that was
he just threw a fit saying he wanted to drive. I remember the other thing. And this one's just like a logic blip for me where it's just like Aaron was just like, I'm going to stay here. I have made my decision, but he knows about the time loops at that point. He's aware of the time loops. He knows it's going to happen. And he makes his conscious decision with that knowledge. He makes his decision to stay there.
They even have like a really developed, good conversation about the meaning of living forever in that context of the time loops. Like, it's a really well thought out conversation. Yeah. It's clear he has actually thought this through.
And then as soon as he realizes, oh, wait, I didn't realize I was gonna die, he immediately... I didn't like that. That was just...
For me, it was...
But I don't know if that's an Aaron problem. That might just be a writing problem.
The other thing was that, like, I liked the way that Emma described it, that, like, when he is given the chance to make a mistake for himself, he doesn't make that mistake.
That's good.
So that's a really good way of putting why he changed his mind, in which case the only thing that didn't make sense, because he knew what the time loops were and he knew that everyone would come back to life, is when they were watching the tape in the viewing center... in the tape room that Tim had locked off.
Everyone pop
and
like a grape.
He saw everyone about to die, and he's like, "Oh my god, they're about to die!" It's like, you know that, Aaron. You know that's gonna happen.
You already watched British big game hunter in a tent explode many times. In
1900s man, as the credits.
Oh yeah, 1900s man.
But yeah, like he did know at that point that was gonna happen. So while I do understand now, like when Emma put it that way, I get why he changed his mind. It does flow with his like thought process of, oh, so my brother's allowed. And I feel this personally because I see this with like he's younger, but my brother is that he's allowed to make all sorts of mistakes as we were growing up. He was allowed to mess up all the time and my parents had endless chances for him. But the moment that I asked to make my own decision and make a mistake, I had all sorts of threats against me about like, we'll stop paying your tuition. We'll stop letting you live in our house. My brother's on like his 5 millionth chance and I love him and I want him to have those chances.
Because your mom listens to this podcast?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
No, she knows that I feel this way.
Okay.
He's on his like 5 millionth chance. He deserves it. Like, I want him to be okay. But I never felt like that was extended to me. So when Aaron was like saying like, hey, I just want the chance to mess up. I want the chance to be at least able to make my own decision. And Justin was finally like, okay, make that decision, make that mistake. And Aaron was like, actually, I don't want to make the mistake. I felt that when actually faced with his like chance to make that mess up, because they were both told not even once, don't even once give in, because that's the end of it.
Yeah.
That was I really liked that.
Aaron
message.
was kind of told that in a bit more of a vague way, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I also
Justin tried for answers so many times and no one would give him a straight answer. I did feel bad about that.
Yeah, I get super
Hal,
pissed.
Please. I just straight up answer me. What is this? And he's like, the universe. And it's like, Hal, you know what's happening. This man is asking you man to man, hey, I'm in a bad spot here.
Give me something I can work with.
Yeah.
But outside of these complaints that I have that make it seem like I really didn't like the movie, I really liked this movie.
Yeah.
I really liked this movie.
I thought it was good too. I'll voice my complaint now so we can on to the good stuff.
Yeah, we're getting the complaints out of the way, then we're moving to the good stuff.
So my complaints were what we've already talked about, which is how they got there, or like the pretext on how they came back, and then also the car scene. Because I feel like, at least critical part of cosmic horror is feeling helpless. It's like when something unknown that is like close to omnipotent, or at least vastly more powerful than you, is breaking down your reality and making you question things, and you don't know, nothing is assured. And so
Mm-hmm.
if I were writing it, I would not have had them escape, because that kind of, it was too of a happy movie for me, a happy sunshiny ending. Because
So
like the
what?
helplessness aspect, I would want to see them either be caught in a loop, or that car wreck is the wreck that killed their parents and how they got into the cult in the first place.
So not gonna
So
lie, I
what?
did think that for a second.
What a great thing to bring up, Graham. Because did they escape?
That was what I was gonna say too. I know that there's theories that they are just on like a multi-year loop, and that this was them restarting their loop.
Because here's the thing. Yes, they escaped that bubble, but there are other bubbles, as we've seen. And the directors have said, like, even though it's not shown, yes, there are other bubbles in the world.
Oh,
And they've
that
said
bums me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, history is doomed to repeat itself. It's
they've
literally all time.
they've also said, because there's a really great interview with them that I really enjoyed. But one of the things they said, the interviewer asked, like, can you comment about like whether or not they for sure like actually did escape, or is something else going on? And they're like, there is a definite answer for whether or not they escaped. Like, we both know it. They're like, it's not something, unless we're like really drunk or something and accidentally let it slip. They're like, it's not something that we plan on publicly disclosing. But they're like, but the evidence is there. And when I heard that, I started thinking about it a bit more, because my initial like gut reaction was like, oh, okay, cool, they escaped. But at the beginning of the movie, when they first get to the camp, or like get to that area, like the one piece of evidence in my mind for maybe they didn't escape is the painting, or like the picture by the side of the road that they drew for their mom by her like grave marker.
Mm-hmm.
And they comment like, oh, this looks like brand new. Maybe somebody came and like replaced the frame or something. And they're like, it looks really clean. And that was outside of the time loop. That's basically where they came out at. And so my thought is like, they may still be stuck in a loop of some sort, although I don't know exactly what that loop like looks like or how often it happens. But I think they definitely are stuck in a loop.
Mm-hmm. The only reason that I think they might not be stuck in a loop is because there were no birds flying in circles. And
Yeah,
that's my only reason, is like they got out, and when they were standing, what do you call? He was standing outside the loop and saw birds on both sides, and then he was standing inside the loop and only saw birds on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning with the at the what do you call, at the picture and grave marker.
Yeah.
There were no birds. Oh wait, no, that actually works against me, in fact, because I'm saying now that there were no birds when they were on the inside of the loop, when they looked out, and here they are out, and there's no birds flying in a circle.
But
Yeah.
there were birds. They just weren't flying.
Oh,
in a
that's right. There
circle.
were birds, but they weren't flying. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
So that's
because when they first escaped, I noticed like the flock of birds and how they were flying in a normal bird like formation, and I was like, okay, that's all the evidence that I need in my sleepy state. I'm going to take this as they did escape.
Yeah. I don't think that the birds flying in in a circle or circular patterns in general are like the only indicators that they're in a loop.
Mhm.
And this is, it would be a spoiler to talk about this because it's a spoiler for Resolution, kind of.
I think that we should just give a spoiler warning for Resolution right now, because I did read an entire plot synopsis just to make sure that I knew what was coming.
Okay.
So
Spoilers for Resolution.
I would go ahead and say spoilers for Resolution so that we can knowledgeably discuss this movie.
Okay, beautiful. Love that. Spoilers for Resolution 2. So in Resolution, Resolution is a lot more meta than this movie, but it kind of carries over to this movie because they're related. But in that, the circle and the monster are kind of meant to kind of mirror like the audience, like watching a movie. Like the god is this god that's making these people replay these moments over and over and over again to tell a story.
That makes sense.
It's the people trying to escape this story. And so the circle can be shown as maybe like the director like throwing in things to kind of like stir up the story a little bit, or it can be seen as like the audience viewing things through the circle. But just because the circle in the sky isn't there doesn't mean that they aren't in the time loop. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense as to why the circle, like, the circle mirroring, like, the audience makes a lot of sense, because when we're shown, like, what the birds, like, see, the photos that they drop for Aaron are shots that we literally see. Which has broken my immersion in other movies that do that. It's like, how did they get the angle that this team clearly got on, like, a crane or whatever? But in this movie, it makes sense, because that's, like, what it's supposed to be. I love that.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to throw out some other fun facts. Now that we're in the spoiler part. What do you say, Noah?
I said I'd love to hear them.
Great. So at the point where Justin is being shown a card trick by that magician member of the cult, you know the one. The card that Justin draws is the King of Hearts, which is otherwise known as the Suicide King, because it holds a sword behind its head, and it's kind of like a call to Justin thinking that it's a suicide cult.
Nice. I didn't even register that. That's cool. I like that.
That is cool. I didn't register it either, but thank you, IMDb trivia parts.
What that means, that he denies that it's his card, though. Like, is he acknowledging it's not a suicide cult?
I don't know. I think he just wanted to fuck with the people.
Probably just wanted to be like, F you, your card's wrong.
Yeah.
Multi-layered.
It's like, F you, you messed up your trick. So, another fun fact is we see Hal working on this like equation in his cabin that he says to him is the god. Like, that's his understanding of the god, is that equation. Next to that equation is a globe. And apparently on that globe, it shows Southeast Asia and Australia, but they're not shown in the configuration of how we now know Australia and Southeast Asia to be, but it shows Australia on the globe connected to both Papua New Guinea and Tasmania, which last happened more than 12,000 years ago. I don't know what that means, but fun fact.
Man, I would have just assumed that it's an out-of-date map from one of the ancient people who was stuck in the loop.
Could be.
Because I kind of get the vibe that Tim has been there the longest.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like he's been there a very long time. He's the guardian of the tape shack. You know, like...
Yeah.
And he's also the one that encourages Aaron to not stay.
Yeah. I think he's been there long enough to like be like, don't fucking do it, kid.
Yeah, he did open the tape shack up for them too.
Because he does not... Yeah. He seems resigned to his fate, but he does not seem happy with his fate, you know?
And he doesn't seem to want other people to necessarily get caught up in it either.
Mm-hmm. What were you saying, Graham?
Do you think Tim is the guy who's been there the longest of the cult members? Because I would have thought it was the guy with the gramophone who's in the 5-second loop that's been there the longest.
Oh, yeah, in the
Oh, well,
cult,
he's not
I
in
think
the
it's
cult,
Tim.
though.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Gramophone guy is from the 1900s. I honestly wouldn't say off the top of my head that I think that Tim hasn't been there longer. He may have been.
He's been there at
Yeah.
least 1 year longer.
Okay.
Just
I think-
because.
Yeah,
No, I
I
have
think
no
there
reason to-
could be other people out in there, out in the forest or whatever, that have been there even longer.
Mhm.
But I think Tim, of the cultists that we saw, has probably been there the longest.
I won't lie. Knowing that there's, I'm sorry, I'll stop cutting you off after this. The knowledge that there's other loops in the world outside of that like one valley that they're in bums me out, because I really like the thought that while this is an incredibly powerful being, it's hiding in this like one little corner of the world. That is, in my mind, that is scarier than knowing that there's all over the world there's little spots
I
like
agree
this,
with that.
because I like the idea of going out for a hike in some new mountains and then suddenly your life is done. You're stuck.
I agree with that, because I think it harkens back to what I was saying during my rating. I think cosmic horror does best when it's self-contained, which is why, like, especially in cosmic horror movies, if you look at like the three that I'm super familiar with, Color Out of Space, Annihilation, and this one, Color Out of Space and Annihilation are Annihilation and The Endless, I'm sorry, are literally self-contained in that they are contained inside one bubble that the protagonists enter at the beginning of the movie.
Florida.
But like that's what helps, that gives those two movies like a lot of strength. And in The Color Out of Space, it's a less defined, it's not an actual literal bubble, but it's the area affected specifically by the color. And I think that like a lot of the fear of the unknown, and this is why I'm glad that the directors are not specifying like whether or not they actually escaped. The fear of the unknown lies obviously in the unknown, and clarifying any details beyond such a well-crafted movie starts to break down the enjoyment of that movie. It doesn't matter what the details are, or if they theoretically set up some really cool stuff in the future, like maybe there are all sorts of these elder gods living all over the earth. Like, theoretically, that's really neat. In the scope of one really well self-contained time loop movie, it does break down the enjoyment just a little.
However, I would also have been totally happy if Graham's ending had come true.
Oh,
and they were the one that crashed into their parents' car.
I think that would seal the loop up really nicely, so to speak. But I'm not gonna crap on.
Ambiguous ending is fun.
It seems
I'm okay with both.
Yeah, it seems from literally everything I've read about these directors, ambiguous endings are kind of their thing.
I respect it.
So,
Graham, you were gonna say something, and then I cut you off for like the third or fourth time.
I have.
Now, don't let me cut you off in the future. I'll let you talk. Don't worry.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that you get your chance to say something.
Graham, don't worry. Noah will let you talk real quick.
So I guess I have three things.
I won't interrupt you.
But I really agree with Nina, and I really liked that they didn't show the monster at all, because I feel like movies become 10 times less scary whenever the demon, the monster, whatever is, you get a good look at it, and you're like, okay, it's physical.
Yeah.
Look at our full body shot in Insidious that totally ruined it.
Yeah, exactly.
I really loved that girl's depictions of the creature or of the god, like that she drew. I thought those looked really, really cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was glad they just left it at that.
I liked also that we got to see what I interpreted, I'm not sure how true this is, as different cultures' representations of the monsters scattered throughout the valley.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
When Noah was talking about it being self-contained, I was wondering if you guys actually thought it was self-contained. Because it seems like all the different statues you see, there's like a Native American totem pole, and then there's like this kind of Easter Islandy statue.
Mm-hmm. And then there's big metal dragon.
Yeah, so that looks more, I would assume it would be Asian influence. So I'm wondering if this is like either trophies that the monster has brought from other places, or maybe it's part of a bigger time loop, but are all of these different like interpretations of what the monster is? Because like, is it a big scary dragon that you like is invisible? And then like, I think her name's Lizzie is the one who draws. I can't
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, she sees it as she depicts it in her art, and
Mhm.
then Hal sees it as the equation,
Yeah.
and that's why Hal gives the really sucky answer about it's the universe. No, it's different to everybody.
I bet it
It's
doesn't
just
have any
math.
color, and it's like, shut up,
Yeah.
Hal, you little plagiarist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think personally my theory is that it's like different cultures that have like wasted away in their time loops over time in the same area that just plays into like maybe because what we saw with the 1900s man is that his loop stopped while we watched. Like he didn't come back after that last, like the music kept going and the remnants of his like being there were still there, but he was gone.
Wait,
did
was
not-
he?
Yeah,
We didn't hear him again.
we didn't hear him. We didn't see the tent shake after he exploded against the window that last time. So I thought that was
Mm.
really interesting. And I think maybe loops do end at some point. Maybe when the monster gets a new like person, he like cuts off the old stuff that just doesn't have whatever
It's not
energy. Maybe they're
entertaining
too
anymore.
worn out. Exactly. So
Or they finally complete their part of the story.
Yeah.
Like maybe 1900s man was only there to scare Aaron.
Yeah.
Oh.
Could be.
That man lived 3 seconds for over 100 years
That would suck.
just to scare. I mean, Shitty Carl did not have a good time, and he had 3 hours.
Yeah.
that was another thing that Noah and I were talking about was how aware people are of the loops.
Mhm.
Some people seem to have very different levels of awareness. Now knowing that the beginning of Chris and Matt's loop was a reference to the movie.
Mhm.
Mike. But yes.
Oh yeah, Chris and Mike. Sorry. Knowing that Chris and Mike's was a direct reference to the movie makes a little more sense why they had like almost no memory, it would seem, of the situation, but they remembered that it happened multiple times later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I did wonder about that.
because the cultists seemed to know.
So,
They seemed aware.
So
Some of them did. Some of them definitely didn't, I would say.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, like
I
what's her
feel
name?
like the beginning of their loops sometimes like plays off like the same way, but then they kind of become aware, and like continue as normal or whatever. But
Maybe it's
I think-
situational because the cultists, they come in and like individuals joined this cult at like bit by bit. So
Mhm.
maybe they all just reset versus
Yeah.
a moment in time that was captured and then the loop continued.
Yeah. So couple things.
Ooh.
And I mean, maybe you guys picked up on this, but I definitely didn't as I was watching through the movie. But there's the girl in the camp that is sad because she can't find her husband.
Mhm.
Her husband is Mike,
Yep.
Yeah.
who's stuck in the time loop with Chris.
Justin was so close to telling her too, and I'm glad he didn't, because that would have been an awful thing to do. Oh, your wife who you miss? She's in the next loop over. No.
Yeah, that
No,
would make
don't-
the torment
no.
10 times worse.
Yeah,
Probably more than 10.
definitely don't tell him that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was another one. Shitty Carl was referenced in the first movie, Resurgence, Resolution, but wasn't actually shown, and so that was cool that he was in this movie. Also, the RV that they go to is in Resolution and belongs to this like scientist. And on the note that is left at the RV site, it says that he's gone to find his colleagues, because in Resolution he says that his colleagues went off into the woods and they haven't come back. But yeah, so
It was such
That's
an
really
ambiguously
interesting.
dated note.
He was like, I don't know what day it is.
No, he
like,
had
I
a
don't
date.
know what year it is.
Month, day, what year?
I think
yeah,
What's interesting to me about this being a quote unquote like in the same universe like sequel-esque thing is that honestly and this is to like the listeners out there, I don't think that you necessarily have to view these in order to like get the full effect. I would say this feels like something where you could go back and watch Resolution after the Endless and it would just make things make more sense, but I think it works the other way around too. It's kind of like I was talking to Noah about Edgar Wright's Cornetto trilogy and whether you need to watch Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz first. It doesn't really matter. Either way, you're getting a full experience from watching both.
Yeah.
And speaking of the directors,
builds it out. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, it fleshes it out. They did say, I saw that obviously these two movies are very like interconnected, have some of the same characters, have the same villain. They have confirmed that Synchronic takes place in the same universe, but not directly connected to the other two movies. So that makes me really want to watch that one. Obviously, I really want to watch Spring as well. And then my favorite thing, I'm going to get a little nerdy, is that these two guys have been confirmed as directors for a Marvel TV series, Moon Knight.
Oh.
Ooh,
which is about
they're doing Moon Knight?
They're doing Moon Knight, our schizophrenic werewolf hunter. Will be coming to screen, and these guys will be in charge of it. And I'm very excited because Moon Knight might not be one of my favorite heroes, but I'm way more interested knowing that he's in good hands.
Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, I knew Moon Knight was like being made, but I didn't know these guys were doing it. And now I'm
Oscar Isaac is Moon Knight?
Yeah.
I can't believe he'd work with Disney again after Star Wars.
Honestly, yeah.
I wonder if that was in his contract for freaking ever ago.
Yeah. But
can I nerd out as well?
Yes, but let me say a quick thing before we get too far away from it. I don't know if the person misspoke, but in one video I was watching, he said that crazy Carl?
Shitty Carl.
Shitty Carl. Shitty Carl was also mentioned in Spring. So that kind of hints that Spring is kind of in this world as well.
That's really interesting. I might pick Graham, Spring as a movie soon.
It looks really cool. It's horror, yes.
I wasn't
Graham,
sure.
go.
Okay.
Graham,
I'm
go.
I'm gonna throw it back to when we were talking about the equation.
Yeah, throw it back, Graham. Throw it back.
No,
all right.
Graham, did you like pause it and then solve the equation with your incredible engineer brain?
No, but
Damn.
I do know.
Why are you here?
I am here to give what limited knowledge I can, but I do know. Okay, I should preface: I'm not a quantum physicist, but I believe strongly that this is a special case of Schrodinger's equation. So if you don't know what Schrodinger's equation is, Schrodinger's equation quantum mechanically describes how a physical system will behave in time. So he's trying to understand the time loops from a physical perspective. And the H in front of, so if you look at the equation, the first two parts of the equation are H, psi, and psi is the Greek letter that looks like a trident. But H is a Hamiltonian operator, but what it does is it gives you all the possible, basically all the possible outcomes you can get if you know the energy of your system. So he is trying to predict all the possible outcomes that whatever physical system he's looking at, normally they model particles, but is happening in time. So if you are trying to understand time loops from a scientific perspective, Schrodinger's equation is a good place to start.
That's freaking wild that you were like,
That's
no, I
so
didn't pause
cool.
it to try and solve the equation, and then you told us exactly what equation it is, and that like makes my enjoyment of this movie go up a lot.
But I have no idea how they got to the number or how they got to the expressions that they got to. Because there's like a universal gravitational constant in there, and I don't know what that's doing in there. But
see, what we can all agree on is that chalkboard is far too small for that equation.
Yeah, I mean, no.
That man has like an entire room full of chalkboard that he has taken the answer and put it on his tiny little house chalkboard that's like a mood board of, here's where I am.
Yeah, and I love they cut to it towards the end of the movie, and he just writes equals a question mark, I was like, same, bro, same.
That reminds me of
Yeah.
every time I was in the study rooms with my roommate, and she was doing her physics stuff, and I was doing my like Spanish or whatever I had to study for that weekend, and I'd look up and she'd just have all this stuff going, and I'm like, so what does that mean? And she's like, you don't want to know. I'm like, that's fair.
It's about the dark gods of the mountains.
Mhm.
But I thought that was super interesting because
That is super interesting.
it's the nerdy way to try to figure out what's happening.
Yeah,
So-
I'm glad you like knew about that. That's awesome.
Loop theory. So we've
Yeah.
seen some loops reset the building and other loops do not.
Mhm.
So I think or reset the area. So I would hazard a guess that the loop only resets the area if damage has occurred, if it's no longer possible to continue the loop practically, right?
Okay.
Hmm.
Because Shitty Carl's loop, his dead body is just vibing there, hanging
Yeah.
by, he's just
Yeah.
hanging out. But
Mike
and Chris,
Chris's.
they burned their house down, and first that was a really hot visual effect when it reset. That was so nice.
That was cool.
I love that so much. But yeah, that happened, and
It fully reset because the loop couldn't have gone
Mhm.
on without the house. That makes sense.
but it makes me think because they're talking about growing barley up at the cult. How long is their loop? Because I
Oh,
don't think it's that long, right?
10 years. So
Is the cult loop that long?
So, from what I've seen online, people think, or the person that I watched thinks, that they left right before the ascension last time, and then the monster or the god sent the tape to try to lure them back to get stuck in the ascension this time.
Okay. See, that's interesting. That definitely makes sense.
Mhm. That explains why some people are added to the loop later and don't really
Mhm.
seem to get what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, what's her
Yeah.
name?
Lizzie.
The Be Quiet
Lizzie.
lady.
Oh no,
I
be
think-
quiet,
Oh,
lady.
yeah.
Jin.
Oh. Also,
No,
Lizzie,
no.
how she used to hang out with
Mike and Chris.
Mike and Chris for just a minute. Some crazy gun tweaker.
Yeah.
Gun nut tweaker. I love that they call him that.
Some gun nut tweaker guy. Did you say gun nut tweaker guy? Yeah, my buddy Chris.
Oh, I want to switch gears from physics to philosophy really quick.
Okay.
Because this is something I had Noah pause the movie and we talked about, and then as we unpaused the movie, they literally said the exact same thing I had said.
I was about to joke that you paused the movie and solved the philosophical equation.
This is
But-
what happened when I watched Madoka Magica with my friend Sparrow. Is she like, we're watching it and I paused it and I turned to her and I'm like, why doesn't the character just wish XYZ? And Sparrow's like, ugh, that's the conceit of the whole ending. And I'm like, oh, I'm a genius. She was so mad at me. But yeah, in this one, I was like, well, it kind of raises the philosophical question of who is better off. They are, regardless, we know, stuck in these time loops no matter what. They cannot escape them. Who's really mentally, spiritually better off in this situation? And they bring this up in the movie. The people who are aware and cynical and hate the god and are killing themselves constantly, or the people who live a long loop in the cult and are helping each other stay within that long loop. They're living a fulfilling life, and then they are killed by the god. Like, who is actually worse off? Because like, there's not a definitive answer for it in the movie. The answer is get out before you're either one of those people. But the question is there, like, who's actually better off?
I
in
gotta
this
be honest.
situation?
I don't know that there's a good answer for that though, because it's not like they get to pick their loop.
Yeah,
That is
If they got because
but Aaron possibly does, and that's where the conversation comes in. Is that Aaron?
yeah, Aaron had his chance to choose what loop to
Mhm.
join into, and he could have joined the 10-year loop. Which I gotta be honest, when it comes down to it, 10-year loop doesn't sound that bad. That life,
I
they're
get
stuck
his
on the
argument
compound.
when he says it.
It, it's not the worst thing. However, so many other people, like, the 10-year loop is not a bad prospect. You have one horrific death every 10 years, but beyond that, you get to
Stay
vibe
young, you
and
get barley
live on a
wine,
pretty
beer.
decently sized land, and everything's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It sounded like Lizzie chose to stay though. Like she
Mhm.
Like
it
she
sounded
got out
like
of
she
one.
wandered from the mental hospital and then was like, "This is a better place for me," and she
Mhm.
decided to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
she
like,
stayed, but that was her first time. And so when she died, she's
Oh,
now
I didn't
stuck
get
there. Yeah, because she joined after they left.
mhm.
Oh, right, because
So-
she was new. Okay, yeah.
So if it's a 10-year loop, then this
That was her first
her
assumption.
first time dying.
Yeah,
But-
she already has an understanding of the monster from her
Yeah.
drawings.
But Chris's wife at least tried to leave. We don't know if she actually was able to get out or not.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. But
Or
yeah,
not
you know,
Chris's
like
wife. What's his face's wife?
Mike, it's same person.
Mike, yeah.
Functionally,
But
from
then,
what
you know,
I-
you got Mike and Chris who have a few weeks. And then you have Carl who has 3 hours, and you have 1900s who has 3 seconds. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
there's
just
no
decays
question.
in
Their life sucks. There's no way for them to make their life worthwhile, in my opinion.
Well, and the interesting thing is the cause and effect question. Do they have a shorter loop because they keep trying to get out of it instead of just rolling with it? Or are they so cynical because they have such a short loop? And if they had a longer loop, they wouldn't feel that way. It's like
I'm going to go with the
chicken
second
and
option.
egg.
Because there's nothing that makes me think that the entity is a pleasant individual to deal with.
well,
it's
it's
kinda-
less pleasant. It's more, does he get the opportunity to do what he wants? You know, it's not am I being nice to this person? It's, is this person giving me what I want, which is
Mhm.
the ability to mess around with their life, because Shitty Carl doesn't give it that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be why it would shorten its lifespan, is because it's not getting what it wants out of that relationship. If that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, if it's not getting enjoyment anymore out of tormenting them, or like if they just give in, I bet that's not fun if they're not actively trying to.
Because, I
Or
mean, the
yeah,
cult
things.
plays tug of war every night.
And they bring in new people in a way that makes the people want to stay, which gives the creature more like playing cards.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
Yeah.
a lot of thoughts that I have about what the creature's intentions or goals might be, which are all unnecessary to think about because it's cosmic horror and not knowing is better.
I think
Yeah.
that's a really interesting point though, because I also saw Justin as like a mini monster to Aaron, because he's
Mhm.
so controlling of him at the beginning.
Oh.
Because he's like, when Aaron talks to his therapist about like he wants to go on a date, like they picked up those two girls at a bar, and Justin goes
Yeah.
up and goes, "Did you guys know we came from a death cult? Are you a
Yeah.
death cult?" And like shut that down. And he's not letting his brother travel like back to the cult. And that's sort of like their big conflict resolution at the end is like Aaron getting autonomy. Like saying,
Yeah.
I
It's the
want to
whole
drive the
question
car,
of
I want to make mistakes. Like,
whose control is worse for Aaron in the long run?
Yeah.
Is it the monsters or Justin's? Like, well, the answer is neither. He'd really
Yeah.
rather, when Justin finally gives him control, he doesn't have to make the choice between those two controlling figures anymore. He gets a third option, which is he finally gets autonomy.
yeah, and I think it also could go to say, you know, even from a stance of trying to protect or love someone, you can still hurt them. And even if
Mhm.
it also if it's coming from I want to torment you in an endless time loop, it'll also hurt them. So like good intentions don't necessarily mean a good outcome.
Yeah. And this is flipping the subject a little, but going back to, would it be better to like live in a longer time loop? I think Tim kind of gives us this idea that living in a longer time loop sucks eventually as well.
Mhm.
Because you hear the Magic Man talk about how like it takes 1,000,000 hours to become a master in something. And so if you were to dedicate like every waking day to one thing and you live to 115, then maybe you could be a master in that one thing. And if we're to believe that Tim's been there the longest and he's obviously like the brewer, and he's been making this beer this entire time. There's that one scene by the campfire where we see him sitting down, kind of drinking alone, and he tosses the beer because he's not satisfied with it. And so it's also showing that this kind of like
utopia
pursuit of like mastery and all this other stuff, and working towards this goal and working towards like these skills, like you're still never actually satisfied with it. And so like the pursuit of those things doesn't matter anyway. And then once you realize that, like you're still stuck in this loop forever and you can't escape.
I love how many facets there are to this story, honestly. Because there's the obvious horror of like watching it for the first time and realizing everything, but this discussion has just like really highlighted for me how well-rounded each possible like thing is, like how they really used every character and every like opportunity to discuss the morals and the philosophy and the physics and the like horror. They really explored everything about it, and I really like that.
Yeah.
There was
And it doesn't go for it, Grim.
Sorry. There was one part I don't understand at all, which is when they're doing the rope pull with the monster.
Struggle.
Why is the girl who designs all the clothes, I forget her name.
Anna.
Yeah. Why do you think she is the only victor? Like, why did she beat the monster?
It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought about that for like a couple of days, and I don't know.
I don't know either. I can link you guys to the interview that I saw with the directors, because it really highlights that they have a lot of information here and in this movie, and that exists about this movie and around this movie, that shows that there's like so much more to that, like you either get like a little piece of, or that you don't see, or that were like in portions of the script that they had to take out, just to show it feels like a live world kind of, because there are those bits of information where like we don't know the answer and it's not explicitly told to us. But I mean, the struggle is about kind of like overcoming the director, right? Overcoming like the control. And so in that manner, like, what's his fucking name? Justin? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Justin loses because he's constantly trying to be the one in control. And so he loses against the director because whatever. But Aaron is able to like defeat it and gain like a semblance of control for himself. And I guess Anna is able to do that.
He uses a literal narrative device.
Yeah.
When he's doing his struggle, that fishing knot that he like has like a personal connection to.
Mm-hmm.
So that really works well.
Somehow Anna was able to break free from the director or the creature as well, like at least to an extent. And maybe it's through the stuff she smokes all the time.
Oh, the flower?
Yeah.
She do be smoking flower. The moment where they're like, the flower is actually a flower. Who would have thunk? I love how many times there are lines like that from Aaron, and Justin's like, it's obvious. Like, he's just pissed. Because that's like, I would literally say things out loud about Aaron's stupid remarks, and then Justin would say the exact same thing like minutes later. He'd be like, well, what if we did this? No.
Yeah. And I mean, like, because you meet RV Guy in Renegade.
This is like freaking Bella's daughter in Twilight.
Resolution.
Is her name
because you
Renegade?
Meet RV Guy in Resolution, you actually like learn a bit more about like the flowers, but I don't know anything about them. But I know it's brought up in like the actual. Yeah, I know it's brought up in resolution. But yeah.
Okay, are we feeling like we might be ready for reading Noah's notes?
I would love to hear Noah's notes.
Absolutely.
Graham, what were you thinking of for like a Noah's Notes theme song for this week?
Oh my gosh, I had a nightmare that I would be put on the spot for this.
It should have prepared you.
Listen to your heart.
Listen to your heart. Listen to Noah's notes in the same time.
Hey,
There you go.
Listen
Sing
to
it.
Noah's
Sing it.
notes.
Beautiful.
very
You
good.
got it.
There we go.
Nailed it.
Great intro.
I'm no
okay.
Jeff, and I'm sorry Jeff isn't here.
See,
No,
you
that was
didn't sit
perfect.
forward and you go, all right.
No,
So I
what
had
do
this
you think
idea.
it is?
Now you all know Rob Zombie.
This is unrelated to Noah's Notes, but at work the other day, I was requesting a Rob Zombie album from another store in our network. And I had been saying, like, while we were talking about requesting it, it's like, time to get that Robert Zombert, Roberto Zomberto. And the store messaged us back, and they were like, unprompted, said, we got that Robert Zombert for you. And I felt so validated.
Yes.
Okay, so here we go.
While Nina looks through the notes, I saw a note that I liked. During the beginning of the movie, I really enjoyed the VHS tracking lines. I thought that was actually really good. They didn't look as digital as a lot, like a lot of like VHS effects, quote unquote, that just look so digital and tacky. I thought the tracking lines in the film grain actually looked like an actual VHS tape, personally.
Someone's barbecuing very near our house, and I wonder who it is. Okay. We have
barbecue.
We have one that I actually want to know the answer to. I think it was Shitty Carl, but who was the walking road man?
It was Shitty Carl.
Oh, Shitty Carl? Okay.
Yeah.
He looked like one of my soccer coaches when I was little, and he'd get angry and he'd walk just like that up and down the field.
Oh my god.
I can't believe that your
That's
coach is Shitty
terrifying.
Carl.
I was coached by Shitty Carl.
We have, circle birds. Which, yes, you're correct.
Yes.
They were circle birds.
They were circle birds. We have, I thought this movie was The Resolution.
I had that realization right about when they got into the place, and I'm like, oh, this is the other one.
A lot of these notes are very funny to me because they're gonna the reaction should be, you're right, they aren't. Like this one is, none of these people are in their 40s though. Can't convince me. You're right, Noah. They aren't.
They aren't.
Because they're in a 10-year loop, so they're constantly 10 years younger. What are these weird sticks in the ground? I'd like to know about that. Weird volcanic stuff, my ass. You're correct. That is, in fact, from the monster.
It's the monster's daddy juice.
Oh.
No.
Gosh, the follow-up to post-crump clarity.
Hey, Noah.
Monster daddy juice.
You've been watching too many of those serial daddy streams, Emma.
I have been. I'm sorry.
This one is, I'm mildly aware of the spoiler plot point here, but I can't bring it up because Nina doesn't know it. Was that just time loops?
It was just time loops.
Okay.
I like Card Trick Man. All he knows is card trick.
Yes, I was gonna read that one. We have hot damn that rope burn.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
The entity had no patience for Justin going and playing rope game.
Yep.
Tug of war with the devil.
I do love Tim, though I'm not sure what his deal is. Valid.
Also, with what Emma pointed out about Tim not being satisfied with his ale, now it makes more sense when he was just like, well, they raised the barley, they should get the credit.
Yeah, he's like, shut up. It's
So
not
he's
that good.
Clearly still not fully pleased with it.
We have sun's not supposed to flicker like that. You're right.
No.
It's not.
I really loved that effect though. And
I swear to God, like that's one of those things that is so cool to see in a movie, because I swear to God that just happens sometimes. Like that's like one of the most popular like things on the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit is people being like, swear to God, the sun just flickered. I don't have any lights on in my house. And like, there was just a flicker. I don't think I blinked. There was just a flicker.
I've had that happen a lot where like I
Same.
think I did not blink, but I must have.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I like that that's included in a horror movie where it's like, oh, but what if the sun was flickering because it was a giant freaking lake monster?
Your brain just needs to refresh real fast.
Exactly. Rebooting. There's a lot of smack talking Aaron's rendition of House of the Rising Sun in here.
I never want to listen to House of the Rising Sun
I have
again.
to agree with that. I did not appreciate hearing that.
I liked the credits version, and if that was the only version I had heard over the course of this thing, I'd be thrilled.
I liked the off-tone singing, and that's another thing to me that suggests that maybe they didn't escape, is just how often we hear that in Aaron's singing voice.
Oh, that would be a really cool way to show that they're in the loop if Aaron got really good at singing. Like, that's his million hours, and he's like super good.
Now he's actually good at singing. A lot of the like mirroring and simulacrum stuff for the like time loopy areas where like you saw the like mirrored images of things, very cool. This is not me reading Noah's notes, I'm just thinking out loud. But I did like that. I liked when they were standing, Anna and Aaron were standing on opposite sides of the loop. And Justin had no idea she was there, but Aaron had no idea she was there, but Anna like waved, like she knew he was on the other side, even though she couldn't see him. And I like that as another like hint to the fact that she is really hyper aware of everything because of the flower.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Oh, so you think the flower is like makes her immune to part of the monster's sway?
I think
Or
it's
maybe
a
just
double-edged sword.
more
where
aware of
yeah,
it.
because she doesn't seem to be immune to it. It seems like she's also like kind of hippy-dippy about it once she is high, so it doesn't seem to be like
And then she... Sorry, I should have realized this earlier, but then she breathes into Aaron's mouth, and that's when he goes after and looks for Justin. After he gets high.
Oh, that's true. After he gets high.
Mm-hmm. And
I think he sort of wakes up a little.
Mm-hmm.
When they're high, they can see the edge of their loop. But she's like, sometimes you can see it, but pretty much only when you're high. So yeah, it's
what else? A lot of comments on what the hell are these posts.
I really wanted to know what they are.
Something.
Yeah, I didn't think that.
I just remembered something that I wanted to say. Another piece of evidence that they are stuck in a loop is when they're at the RV and they leave, and then that projector turns on and starts showing that exact scene. And then the monster like fucking yeets that shit so they don't see it. He was pissed. He like throws it. He throws the projector like off into the distance, I imagine, so that they don't see it. And I think that's potentially another hint that they actually are stuck in a loop.
That's true.
And he's just trying to keep it from them.
What was I gonna say? Reminds me of the Pennywise projector scene, except cooler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, that was another part that made me jump.
Mm-hmm.
was that projector getting yeeted.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you guys also know how 1900s man, as he was nearing the end of his loop's lifespan, like his face seemed a little melty? I couldn't tell if that was just how he looked or if his face was getting melty.
I think that was just how he looked, but I don't know.
See, because there were a few times when there were panning shots that the landscape warped a little bit. And I don't know if that was just bad filming or if that was intentional, but I didn't like it. It was a little confusing. And a similar thing happened to his face, except he was just sitting there.
What else? We got a couple more that I want to read. This one is, this whole sleep together debate reminds me of, actually, bitch is just a female dog, so that's a compliment.
Oh my god.
I can't believe we watched this movie right after I had someone say, like, in it's something I was involved in. It was just this person called someone a bastard, and they're like, well, thanks for that, because actually, you don't actually know what that means, because a bastard is someone who was born out of wedlock, so you clearly don't know my situation. And it's like, yeah, that's
the joke is whoever threw that paper, your mom's a hoe. That's the joke.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom's a hoe.
Actually, according to the etymology of the word.
So I couldn't believe that, like, right after I used the bitch is a female dog thing, we hit a movie where it's like, you do realize that's not what sleeping together means, right?
We also have that was dated 1942. What was dated 1942, Noah?
One of the tapes.
One of the tapes.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, it was the oldest date that I saw. There might have been some other older ones on there, but 1942 is the oldest I happened to notice.
And then our last note is, I never want to listen to House of the Rising Sun again. But there is one second to last note that brings up maybe like the last thing I wanted to talk about. The cultists look satisfied and happy at the end of where their loop resets, but they're all looking in the same direction. Are they looking at the direction that the brothers like drove off in? Because that's the impression I think we're supposed to get.
Yeah.
Is that they saw that the brothers escaped or didn't escape, and either way they're happy with the results.
Yeah. That was the vibe I got.
Yeah, same.
But how could they see
Samesies.
them? They were so far away.
They just, I don't know. I think that is a weird scene. And I think there's a lot you can look into for it, because also the main guy seems like the others kind of seem like satisfied-ish, but the main guy seems a bit like sad.
Mm-hmm. Which you
I
can
don't know.
still read either way. Maybe he's sad they escaped.
Yeah, you can read either way. It's hard.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I really enjoyed this movie a lot.
It's a good movie. I really liked it.
But mood.
I really want to watch Spring.
Yeah,
and
I
Synchronic.
might
Same.
pick Spring for my next one because I just really enjoyed these directors, and
I
would
can't wait
love
to watch
more
Resurgence.
I would say, knowing what I know about Spring, don't watch a trailer.
Yeah, that's basically what I've heard as well, is go in as blind as you
Oh.
can.
I don't
Yeah.
watch trailers, period, for anything.
Mood.
Me neither. I can't remember the last time I willingly watched a trailer.
I watched a trailer for Spring literally right before we recorded this because I was curious, because I knew Resolution and The Endless were tied. I was curious, like, if Spring was a similar sort of feel or what it was. And the interview I've talked about also talks about Spring a little and spoils some of it. So also don't watch that interview, I guess.
I'll send you the interview, but don't watch it.
But don't watch it though, guys. But yeah, I think it'll be a really good movie to go blind into.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if I decide to try and pick something else, you can always remind me that I wanted to pick Spring, and I will probably be like, oh yeah, and then I'll pick that because I don't have anything else I feel more strongly about. Speaking of movie picks, Jeff's not here today, but
No, stop that. Don't say Jeff's not here today. Jeff's right over there.
oh yeah, hey Jeff,
Yeah.
how's it going? What's your movie pick?
Pretty good.
No, so Jeff, why don't you tell us what your next movie is gonna be?
On the next episode, we'll be watching 1985's Phenomena by Dario Argento.
That'll be a
great,
fun movie.
yeah.
That sounds like a
That sounds
great
really
pick.
cool.
I'm so
Yeah.
Nice.
excited to watch it.
That'll
I'm
be
very
really
excited
fun.
to watch that movie.
You guys will
Yeah.
definitely have to watch that movie before we do our next episode because you'll want to know what happens before we talk about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
Yeah, me neither.
I
I'm
think
really
I
excited
have.
for it though.
I guess we'll find out.
Okay, so I imagine we're all done, right? We
Pretty much.
we closing it out.
The one
would think
thing
so.
I had on my notes that I didn't talk about was when Hall said, "Can I show you something in the back of my cabin?" I thought we were going to a completely different place.
Yeah.
Then here's an
Yeah.
equation on my chalkboard.
Life and energy equals question mark.
Mood.
Okay, cool. Well, as
Take us
always,
out, Emma.
yep, as always, you can find us on Twitter at Casual Horror Pod or on Facebook at Casual Obsession, or is it Casual Horror Pod?
Casual Horror Pod.
Casual Horror Pod. I manage the Twitter and I post things sometimes, and you should follow us. If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at mjade2017 on Twitter, I think. Something like that. And nowhere else. Don't talk to me anywhere else other than Twitter.
You've been
Don't talk to me or my social medias ever again.
Yeah.
Noah?
What about
I'm
you,
Noah.
Noah?
Noah, you can find me as Bubba the Bad, BUBBADABAD. I'm on Twitch, Twitter, and Insta. You can follow me on those.
Cool.
Beautiful.
And I'm Nina, and you can follow me at Nina Wolverina on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. And on Tumblr at Nina Wolverina, but there's a 3 instead of an E because I locked myself out of my own username. Woo!
Yay!
If you want more horror-specific takes and some like really cool art that I retweet, House Usher Rises is my horror account on Twitter. And thank you so much for joining us, Graham. Where can we find you?
Oh,
Unless you don't want to share. That's
plug.
okay.
That's
No, it's
also fine.
You can find me at Throcket Man, which is not a Kim
Throcket
Jong-un
Man.
joke. It is a reference to the Elton John song. On Twitter and Instagram. My Twitter is not super active. If you're interested in label-free neuromodulation or intraoperative nerve detection, I retweet a lot of stuff about that. And grad
fucking
student
nerd.
memes. And of course, the Casual Obsession Horror podcast Twitter.
Yeah, and what's your home address in case anybody wants to go out and
Send you
hang
fan
out
mail.
with you?
225, none of your business.
Ayo, I thought you were gonna be like 321 Wallaby Way, Sydney, because like that's the
Yeah.
only fictional address I've maintained in my life.
Yep.
Oh, I
valid.
should have done a Nemo.
Hold
Should've
on.
done-
We'll redo it.
I don't
No, I'm
remember
kidding.
the
We're not
name.
gonna. We're not gonna
Wallaby
do it.
Way,
I already know I
Sydney.
said the
Um,
wrong one. No one tell me.
As always, thank you all so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you soon listening to our next episode. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Woo!
We should have talked about this before, but who has my appearance fee?
Oh.